Why do you find such colorful fish in more tropical waters? Why, if you were scuba diving, would you see such a great diversity of color at the reef? Well, first, there's a physical answer to the question. Um, Fish possess melanocytes, which can make the pigment melanin, just as we find, say, in land vertebrates. And melanin, depending on the version produced, its concentration, can produce hues of black, brown, and gray. And so this is responsible for those colors. White colors are reflected light, and so there can be crystals in the skin of fish made of guanine, which reflect light and then produce a region which appears white. You can see how colorful the corals in this reef are. And that is because inside the corals there are algae known as dinoflagellates, which have pigments which help them absorb light as they perform photosynthesis. There are certainly other types of algae in the area as well. And so when fish eat, they are ingesting pigments from other organisms, such as algae or the organisms that eat them, including the carotenoids. And if the fish's body then processes the carotenoids from its diet, it can then produce pigments in the dermis, which give red, yellow, and orange colors. Typically, blue, green, and purple pigments are not caused by a specific pigment molecule which has that color, but rather the structure of the scale reflects and refracts light in a specific way to produce those colors. Another question could be, why are the fish so colorful? What is the advantage? This is complicated, and in reality, there are many answers. So, in no particular order, here are some reasons why we see such bright coloration at a coral reef. First, because of the diverse types of algae, a coral reef is already full of bright colors. So, a color which might seem obvious to us might actually help camouflage in a fish. Second, one has to think about how light appears underwater. And so as a fish looks up, it's going to be looking towards where the light is coming from. So any fish which has a lighter underside may blend in with the lighter color above, in the same way that a darker dorsal side might blend in with the bottom because it gets darker as one gets deeper. Also, colors differ because the wavelengths of light which have more energy, such as blue and violet, are going to go deeper in the water column than, say, red and yellow. With less energy, they don't penetrate as much water. So colors can look different as one goes deeper in a coral reef. Third, one has to consider how fish see color. So the fact that something is bright or may stand out to human eyes doesn't necessarily reflect how fish interact with each other. Fish are adapting their colors on A, how predators might see them, and B, how other fish might see them, perhaps fish in their species, their group. Fish see color. In fact, they can see more colors than we can, with some seeing ultraviolet light as well. Since there are so many different kinds of fish at a reef, it is then intimidating to consider that there would be potential variations in how color is perceived by all of these different species. And so then what the effect of a specific fish's color is may vary. Because of the species richness of tropical waters, it is much more challenging for a fish to find members of its own species, to aggregate in a group, or to find a potential mate than it is, say, for fish in fresh water. And so whether it be a large, complicated reef or whether it be open water, how does one find one's own species? So bright colorations which are noticeable could certainly help in this regard. Camouflage simply means blending in with one's surroundings. Because the surroundings are so diverse, then different coloration patterns and different forms of banding and spotting, which might seem obvious to us, might actually help a fish blend into a specific part of the reef. When we consider the different patterns of stripes and coloration, uh, once again, we almost have to think like a fish. Does this help a fish recognize its own species? Might one gender find this pattern attractive so that it could be used as courtship? If predators are looking for fish, might a specific pattern of stripes or spots break that outline up so that a predator doesn't see a fish because of these stripes or bars? If there is a group of fish traveling together and they all have, say, these stripes, if they change direction, might that disorient a predator so that they would find it difficult to focus on just one? All of these are variables, and unfortunately, we would have to think like a fish, and different predators might have different ways of approaching colors and patterns, so obviously this is difficult. Some fish might be brightly colored to advertise being toxic to a predator. And then other fish might mimic that. So even if they weren't toxic, by mimicking a toxic species which had warning coloration, they might escape predation. Finally, fish may even change their color. And so physiologically, they can alter the arrangement of the pigment structures in their dermis, which would alter their shade, or they might change the way that they swim. And so by, say, swimming upside down briefly, this changes their appearance to other fish. And so the coral reefs, which have such an amazing diversity of fish, it's thought that a quarter of all ocean fish spend at least part of their life in a coral reef. We have diverse colorations here for a diversity of reasons.